Right, good afternoon everyone. Well, this is actually a bit of a change for myself. Usually I get either the first session after the Geek Fest, okay, or I get the last session on the last day. So this year I was actually really thrilled and delighted not to get any of those sessions. That was the original schedule, okay. Unfortunately, one of our speakers is flying out tomorrow afternoon, and as a consequence I had to swap one of my sessions from yesterday to the end, so I do get the last session on the last day. But that's still a good excuse to come here and have a look at it. So anyway, my name's Wayne Newington. I'm a principal consultant for Microsoft New Zealand. I've been working for Microsoft coming up for about 14 years now. So those that know the usual spiel, I mean, about 4 or 5 years ago, I left for 6 months, came back, Microsoft rehired me, and as my colleagues tell me, Microsoft made the mistake twice. Okay, really nice of them. Basically, I've been playing around with SharePoint right back to something called Tahoe. Anybody know what Tahoe is? Okay, I know you know. It's not for a prize yet. Okay, it's not for a prize. Okay, Tahoe was the code name for SharePoint Server 2001. Okay, so that was going back and playing with the beta bits. And the other product I used to play around with was something called Encompass Resolution. Anybody know what that was? Once again, not for a prize, although I have got some swag. Content Management Server, very good. So that was a company called Encompass. We purchased a product called Resolution version 4. So if you actually had a look at it, there was some ENR directories and all that type of stuff in there. So basically, I used to love doing content management server work, had a bit of a love-hate relationship with SharePoint, basically decided to give up and kind of, once the product teams got merged in together, kind of throw myself at SharePoint, where I decided to go after a number of certifications, including the MCM, MCA, and Microsoft Certified Solution Master, which I went through the upgrade rotation back in January this year. So as you're probably aware, some of those advanced certifications are now unfortunately being cancelled. Bit of a disappointment, but we can talk about that offline if you want to. As part of that, I was also part of the MCSM instructor team. So there was a couple of modules there that I used to deliver. And in other words, actually train the candidates on. I was also involved in some of the other things behind the scenes. So if you ever went through a rotation, although you may not have seen me, you would have actually felt my presence at one point or another. I'm also a member of the Worldwide Centre of Excellence for SharePoint. So that's a group of about 6 of us consultants around the world where we basically do work for the product team, essentially getting involved in some of those more tricky engagements, some of those more political involved ones. And we're basically called the Rangers. So hence the reason for the photos up there. The Lone Ranger down in the bottom left corner. Me pointing, SharePoint, I am a Kiwi, so I'm a true blue Kiwi. In fact, I'm actually an Aucklander, so one of the few Aucklanders that are here. So we do know about those acronyms called JAFFA. I'm not going to repeat it because I think we're being recorded. The hard hat was basically because I used to do a lot of house renovations. So after renovating houses for about the last 18 years, I finally retired on that, hung my hat up and forgotten about it. As a consequence, I've now put on a bit of weight. I used to be a lot fitter than what I was, and there's a joke that I ate all the pies, and it's probably true. So, what we're going to talk about today, what we're going to do is give you an overview of some of the extensibility points that are available from a search perspective in SharePoint Server 2013. So this is really, the key word here is an overview. There is a lot of extensibility points that we can actually do here. Now the issue is we are limited to an hour. We could spend a day, half a day, or however long you want to, going through all these different types of things that we've got here. So it is going to be an overview, and there's going to be a little bit of assumed knowledge. Now the other thing I should point out too, some of the slides I've got up here are more for your reference. So what will actually happen is that I'll skip over some of them, not go into too much detail, but it's more for you to go through and have a look later as a bit of a reference material if you want to, or kind of jog the memory about what I actually said when I was actually doing the demos, which is what I'm going to concentrate on. So what we're going to do today is go look and have a look at the search architecture. So just as an indication, how many people were here through Neil's 300 level search architecture? Okay. Let's draw it the other way. Who wasn't here through that? Okay, cool. So what I'm going to do is just kind of go over a brief overview of the search architecture, get us back to a common base. We'll then look at concentrating on 2 main areas, which is around doing the user experience interface and how we can customize that. So we're going to look at these funny things called display templates, result types, result sources, and query rules, and kind of look at what we can actually do from a user experience perspective on that. Then we're going to go a little bit left field and talk about something called custom entity extraction. So this is a little bit different, another type of extensibility point that you can do, but it's also quite powerful. So we're going to look at that as what we can do. So, search architecture overview. Right, so if you weren't at Neil's session, basically the whole search architecture in 2013 has been completely changed. So it's completely rewritten from the ground up, taking the best of what we had in fast search and the best what we had in SharePoint 2010 search. Although the concepts are kind of same, the underlying mechanisms that actually work in here are quite different. So if we kind of look about what's actually happening here, essentially we've got content coming in from the left-hand side, which goes into the crawl component, which is basically the process which goes out there and brings the content in so we can look inside it and start actually indexing it. As part of that process, we do what we call the content processing. So this is a bit which goes in, gets the document from the core component, opens it up, looks at the data that's in there and tries to interpret what are the managed properties associated with that. Its sole job is to push it into the index. So the index is actually a file system-based thing that we've got here. So the index contains what's been crawled, so the content, and some of those managed properties that we've got in here, such that when we run queries, which come in through the user interface and from the front end, comes in through the query processing component, reaches into the index, and pulls back the results to display to the users. So as you can see, we've actually got two different flows here happening. We've got content coming in, coming across, going into the index, and then we've got the queries coming in and pulling stuff out of the index in order for us to display back to the users. The other thing we've got is this funny thing called the analytics processing. Now, if you look at the Ys, they're a little bit curious there because it's hooking into the front end, or this nominal thing called the front end. So what it's doing is that it's looking at the type of clicks that you're doing, what type of documents are you opening, what type of search results are you doing, and it's feeding that information after analysing it back into the index to help improve the relevancy of your search results. It also looks at part of the link processing as well, which is an output from the content processing component, and also then feeds into the analytics reporting, so we can pull out some reports and look at some of the information associated with that. And kind of tying this all together with regards to crawl schedules and all that other stuff is the search admin component, which has got its own database. So that's the architecture, okay? Pretty straightforward. Neil's going to take you through in the next session, going through is how you can actually scale this out and do a lot of different things with it. So what we're going to look at, which is the whole premise of this talk, is look what we can do from a customization and extensibility perspective. So the first thing we can do if we wanted to is have this thing called custom connectors. So this provides the ability to reach out to other content sources like we did in 2010, bring that in so we can index that data. So you could have something like a SQL Server database, a line of business system, an HR system, whatever you've got there, and you can index that and bring that in. So there's a whole lot of little things you can do in there using the business connectivity services to bring that in. However, if we're using the BCS from a searching perspective, there is a few customizations and extensibility points that we should be thinking about. In other words, how do we actually optimize this from a search perspective? So just as a trick or a little bit of a left field question, how many people here have played around with the BCS? Okay, keep your hand up. Okay. Put your hand down if you don't know what the two main methods are that you need to implement. Ooh, okay. Okay. This is going to make it a bit tricky. How am I going to give you a prize out of this? Well, you can put your hand down because you've run too many. Okay, so I'll go with, sorry. Close enough, okay. So what I've got, you can have the first bit of swag, okay, which is a free pass to the SharePoint conference, okay, unless you've already got one. Okay, so there is two main methods that you've got there, the specific finder and the finder, which is the ID enumerator. Now, if you're doing it from a searching perspective, you want to actually optimize those, bring it back, minimize, because you're going to be batching that information up. Now, the other thing behind that as well is that we've got, as part of the BCS methods, we've got something called a limit method associated with that, which will limit the amount of data that comes back. That's not appropriate from a search perspective. So there's actually another attribute associated in there, which is called the root finder, which is actually used by the search index in order to bring that information back. There's also some other methods that you need to implement if you want to support incremental crawling as well. So, you can use a BCS, but just be wary that you do need to do optimizations from a search perspective. So moving along, we've got this other thing which hooks into the content processing component, which is called this content enrichment web service. So this is very similar to what we had under the fast search, where you could call out, do some additional processing, and manipulate the managed properties that were coming back. We've got the same type of functionality now in 2013 search. So what this is an external endpoint. We can then register, and we can then look at the managed properties that we've got coming in, and then output some different managed properties from that. So we can do some intelligent lookup or business type processing associated with that. We can also do some, what would be an example? We could do some rationalization, like if we're looking for the word HR, we can make it to be human resources or something like that. We can also do some other things in this as well. Depending on how we register that particular call-out method, we can say on an error condition that happens in there, don't actually index that information. So what this provides the ability is to actually stop information from getting into the index file, so it's never going to be able to be searched and queried against. So an example where one of my clients used this was that they registered all the swear words they could think of. So if a particular artifact had a swear word in there, it wouldn't go into the index file, hence it couldn't be searched. Another client used it where they looked at a particular managed property which said whether or not this item was top secret or not, or confidential. Once again, removing it out of the index file to stop people from using it. The other one we've got is this thing called custom entity extraction. Now this kind of works similar to the content enrichment web service, but it provides the ability to do like a dictionary lookup, which can then apply back some different types of managed properties that we've got. And we're going to go in a bit more detail behind that and explain how that actually works. The other thing that we've got is pre- and post-security trimming. Now, under 2010, we had post-security trimming. In 2013, we've got this new thing called pre-security trimming. So the idea being here is that when a query comes in and hits our query processing component, if we want to do pre-security trimming, we can add some additional claims information into that. So usually when we do this is that if we've got something using the custom connector, we want to put some additional attributes or claims to that so we know what we need to security trim as part of that BCS connectivity that we've got. Post-trimming basically gets the results back and then says whether or not the person or the user that's requested the query has got the permissions to actually see that in their results. And they kind of work differently but similarly. And there's some recommendations around using the pre-security trimmer because it's a little bit more efficient. The other thing we can do is do this thing called custom ranking models. So this is the ability to create your own custom ranking model so you can change the search relevancy results associated with this. Now this is getting into quite low-level maths details associated with that, and this is something that we typically recommend that you don't do or you do very, very carefully because you can get into some very interesting situations with regards to the type of results that do come back. And then finally, we can look at it from the user experience perspective. So in other words, how can we actually change how those results come back and look and feel for the actual user that we've got there? So what we're going to concentrate on is just these two areas. If you want to cover the other areas, more than happy to take offline and go through those in a lot more detail. So search UX customizations. Once again, where we're going to be, concentrating on this. So anybody recognize this horrible stuff? Who likes this horrible stuff? You're sick. To me, this is witchcraft, okay, doing XSLT. When I went through university, we learnt a language called Prolog, and that used to be a complete mind screw with regards to actually doing pattern matching. XSLT is right up there with that complexity from my perspective. I find it confusing, I find it complex, it's pretty horrible, and essentially gives me a headache from trying to work it out. The other issue we've got with XSLT is that the editor that we've got associated with this is pretty horrible. It's essentially Notepad, okay, and it's not great, and it's, bleh, hate it. So, what we've got, which is new to 2013, is this concept called display templates. So display templates do exactly what they say they do. They display. And what they display is managed properties. So the critical thing about this is that you need to have the managed properties in the index so you can then manipulate what you want to display back. Now the cool thing about this is that you can develop this in whatever type of tool or language that you want to do, but it's essentially doing it in JavaScript instead of having to worry about this XSLT witchcraft. So, if we then look at these display template layers that we've got associated with this, what we can do is that if we get the search results that come back, we essentially drop this into what we call the control area, which is essentially just it's a web part that we've got there, basically the core results web part. We've then got the items. So these become the different display template items that we can do. So we can do some type of matching against these to say, how do we want to display this particular result? We can also use these display templates to do other things, such as using the filters or the refiners. We can also do groups and hover by panels and all that other cool stuff that comes with this. So what this means is that display templates are not only being used by search, but they're actually being used by other parts of the system as well. So it's kind of embedded in there. Display templates are used by the content by search web part. They're used as part of the pop-out when you go into OWA and see with the little preview that you get there. They're used quite throughout the product that we've got here. So, how do we go about creating these custom display templates? The easiest thing to do is to grab an existing one and copy it. Now, the reason behind that is that there's a little bit of witchcrafty type stuff in there that we need to worry about as well. So if we grab an existing one, we can then use any editor of choice that we want to. We're not constrained to Notepad or Visual Studio. We could use Dreamweaver. We could use whatever we want to. Okay, it's up to us, because what we're going to be doing is doing pure development in here. We then specify what are going to be the managed properties that we want to display inside this display template. We then develop this in JavaScript and HTML using our editor of choice. And then all we do is put it back into the master gallery. Simple as that. Okay, pretty straightforward. Okay, nice and easy. So the other thing we've got is that we've got this other thing called result types. So what result types do is that they look at the properties that we've got to identify a type. So as the example that we've got up here is that we've got a whole, a case of apples here, and they're all kind of looking all the same. So what I want to be able to do is actually pick out one and make it look a little bit different. So what the conditions do is do the match on that particular apple, in this case identifying the green apple, and the display template then provides the ability to make that look different. So I've identified that apple in the middle there, and I'm displaying it as a green apple. Result types, display templates. Result types identify what is the thing I'm trying to display differently. The display template provides the ability to display that differently. So, how do we go about configuring custom result types? We add the managed properties that we're interested in. We specify the result source and the content that we're coming from. We specify the optional conditions that are going to be associated with that. And then we choose the display template to get that back out. So, enough PowerPoint, time for demos? Okay. So what we're going to do is that we're going to take this out-of-the-box display template, and we're going to, oops, haha, that's quite funny. What we're going to do two things to this display template. Unfortunately, I'm only showing one. I need to get the slide updated. What we're going to do is that we're going to add in who's going to be the author as part of this display template. And the other thing we're going to do, which is not what that hand should be pointing at, we're going to show a star rating associated with that as well. So when you go to download these presentations, that image will be updated properly. That's my bad. So what I'm going to do is flick over to the machine. Oh, fantastic. Okay. Okay, my password's easy. I'm the man, I'm the man, I'm the man. Okay, there's a problem about working at Microsoft. They make us have really horrible passwords, so that makes it a little bit tricky to change them and manage them. So what I've got is that I've got this out-of-the-box default search center, okay? So, pretty vanilla, pretty straightforward. And I'm just going to do a search for an asterisk. And I'm getting back the standard type of results that I've got here, okay? So not a big deal, out-of-the-box type functionality, that's what I've got. What I want to be able to do, though, is that I want to show the star rating associated with these artifacts. So that's really one of the critical things I want to do on this. So if I go back into my search documents, what I've got is over on the right-hand side here, is that I've got the star rating on the document. So I want to be able to display that in my result that I've got back there, so people can say, right, that's actually a good document. People are interested in that. They may want to actually use it as part of their, looking at my particular result that I've got back here. So as part of doing this, I've added the column into here, populated a few values in here, and I've also gone through and run a full crawl against this. Now the reason, not a full crawl, I've run a crawl against this. Now the reason for doing that is I don't want to get this as being a managed property, so I can then start doing something with this. So if I go into the search schema, now this is a little bit of a trap to watch out for as well. When you start playing around with the search schema, make sure you're in the right place, because you can sometimes think that you are modifying the search schema in the search results area, and you're not in the same location that you were, and you're looking at the results going, why isn't this picking up? Okay, so the trick here is to always do a search, then go into the search schema. So clicking on the old site settings, go down here into search schema, and I'm just going to make this easy, do the average. Okay, and I've got this average property that is available to me. So it's already gone through and done the configuration for this. So I've got a managed property called average rating, which I can now use in my display template. So far, so good. The next thing I want to do is go through and do the customization of that. So back to the site settings. I then go into this master pages and layouts, go into the display templates, and this is where my display templates live. So anything that I want to do is hidden in here. So as you can see, there's a lot of different subfolders under here. Content, web parts, filters, language files, search, etc. So whatever I'm showing you here, you can also apply to these things as well if you want to. What we're interested in is search. And in particular, what I wanted to do in this particular case, I want to manage my PowerPoints that are coming back and change the display template associated with that. Now, to make it easy to copy that file, I could do a couple of things. I could locate it, download it, etc. But I'm just going to see if I can scroll across. Where's it gone? Dun, 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 dun. No. No. I'm not used to these small views. Dun, dun. It's going to make it a little bit awkward. It's okay. We'll continue on. I'm just going to navigate through until I see it. Item, it's going to be on the next one. Okay, scroll up. I'm going to grab this item PowerPoint HTML, and I'm going to download a copy. Dun, 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 dun. And I'll do a save as, just make sure I know which location it goes into. Yep, I'll put it into there. Okay, open the folder. And I'm simply going to open with my editor of choice, Visual Studio. Okay, right. So this is just the straight HTML that we've got in here. Now, that looks okay from a size perspective. So there's a couple of things I need to worry about here. One of them is the title. So this is really the display name that we're using for this particular display template. So I'm just going to change that to be rating to know what it's going to pick up as. Now, what we've got, now this is the reason why I recommend that you copy one. We've got this funny type of layout where we've got this MSO type information. This information here is quite critical. It is essentially used by the display template to work out how to control and manipulate what you're actually doing with it. In particular, there's a couple of things that we need to call out. One of them is this content type. So the content type that we've put in here is saying what type of content type is this being used for. This is used as a display template content type. So it's going to do some fancy stuff or some additional processing with it when we save it back into our display template library, back into the master gallery. The other thing that we've got here is this target control type. So this says, whereabouts do we want to have this display template available? In this particular case, it's going to be in my search results. Then the other thing that we want to do under here is these manage property mappings. Now, the managed property mapping says, these are the managed properties I want to use in my particular display template, and this is something that I want to do with them. And this kind of works in a key value pair. So as we can see, we've got this thing here called title. So it's saying, look for the managed property called title, and inside my particular display template, I'm going to refer to it as title. So generally, as a rule of thumb, we tend to keep them the same name. Now, what I wanted to be able to do is bring in the average rating property into my particular display template so I can do some manipulation with it. So not trusting myself to do this on stage, I'm simply going to copy that whole line, which I know will work, and Control V. And what I've done, the only change to it, which you're going to have to trust me, is to add in, make that a little bit bigger. In fact, I'll do it that way. So what I've done is brought in, said I'm going to use a property called average rating, and I'm going to call it average rating within inside my particular code that I've got here. Now, the other thing I want to do is there's a couple of different ways you can play around with this with regards to manipulation. So I want to be able to change what's being displayed. To make it a little bit easier for myself, I'm going to have a bit of a JavaScript file which is going to do some little bit of work for me. So, cheating once again, I'm going to just bring in a script file under here, and underline 18. Okay, and all that is doing is just referencing this starrating.js file. It's not doing much, okay? I'm going to show you what the JavaScript looks like very shortly, but essentially it's looking at what is the average rating that I've got, and it's going to bring back the HTML to show that average rating for me as a nice little graphics for me. Now, I've already gone through and uploaded this into this location. This can essentially be anywhere you want it to be. It doesn't really matter. So it could be on the file system, or it could actually be in a library. It doesn't really matter where you want it to go. But once again, it goes back to following those recommended approaches that you do with regards to JavaScript, as Victor covered off in the previous session. You know, whether or not you want to do script on demand and all that other good stuff that comes with it, okay? But this one's quite small, so I'm quite comfortable with just doing a straight load on it. The other thing I want to do then is change what the display does in here. So once again, cheating. I'm simply going to create this little div, another div in here. So all it's doing is calling out, going out to rating, getting to the current item and passing it in. Now you're probably noticing that we've got these other funny little glyphy type things that are happening in here. Now these are actually quite critical. What they're doing is part of the processing that actually happens on this file. So anything between this bracket, exclamation, dash, dash, hash, underscore, is going to be pulled out as a separate JavaScript file from us. So we're only playing around with this HTML file. Okay? If we go back and have a look at what was in this library, we'll notice that we've got this item PowerPoint HTML file, but we've also got this .js file associated with this. So as part of this content type that we're doing and that gets uploaded, it looks at this and goes, right, what is the JavaScript that's in here, pulls it out, and puts it into this separate file for us. What this means is that when you start playing around with the JavaScript side of things, don't touch the .js files that are in this library. Why? You upload and change the HTML file. Part of the process that's going to happen in there, it's going to override it, okay? Trap for young players. Don't do this, okay? So, if we kind of go back into this, we worry about that. Now, the other thing that we've got under here is that we have got this underscore hash equals in here. So this says, I want to do something with this particular processing as part of what I've got in here. So once again, the parser that understands this looks at this and goes, I need to do something with this. And it effectively executes our JavaScript that we've got here. Now, hopefully, that is all I need to do on that. I'll just double check on that. That looks good. I'm going to do a file save as. Just like to keep it a different name. And I'm going to do something real brave and overwrite my default one, my backup one. I'm going to replace it. So that's all good. Now I'm going to simply upload a document into this location, go into the browse, where to go, rating. open, go OK. Take a few seconds. It's pulled up and identified those additional metadata properties that we've got in there, which is what the MSO fields were in there. So I can say what type of display template it is, keep it as that, put some additional information around it, say where I want to be able to use this, have some type of preview, etc. on it, look at my data mappings that I've got in there, and I'm simply going to save that. What we should have seen is that should have basically pulled out and extracted out that JavaScript file for us. So it's as part of that upload, HTML, it's still in the JavaScript's still in the HTML file, the JavaScript is now separate and we've got that sitting in there. So that's all pretty good. Now the next thing we want to be able to do is go back to our search center. So once again, make sure we're in the right place by actually going to the search center before I go to the search settings. Site settings, I should say. Now I want to start playing around with what we've got called the result types. Now, these are the different types of result types. So essentially what we get out of the box are these different ways of displaying things out of the box. We can change the priority of the order of these. Okay? So with this, the order processing is that we're going to look at people, look at these types of matches that we've got in here, and we're going to look at this type of display template associated with this. So for people, we're going to use the people item in order to display those when they come back. What I want to do is use this PowerPoint one. So I'm simply going to go copy. And I'm going to rename that to be rating. Okay. And it then says these are the conditions I want to match on. So there's a whole lot of different types of rules, etc. So I can look at different conditions. I can do like AND conditions on these and hone down into the type of item that I'm looking for within here. So I'm just going to use the PowerPoint. Since I copied it, it's using the PowerPoint item, but I want to use my PowerPoint item rating display template that I've just created. And I just want to save that. So far, so good. If I go back and do a search, hit the asterisk, come back in, we get a little bit of a refresh sometimes, provided that I did this right. Come on. Dun, 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 dun. Dun, 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 dun. Something's gone wrong. That's a bit of a bugger. Rating JavaScript. Okay, let's just double check that I've got that loaded up in there. The problem with doing this a number of times is that you do your walkthroughs of your demos and then you clean stuff up, and sometimes you clean stuff up a little bit too much. So let's just go back, go into display templates, search. Just make sure I've got this other file in there. Star rating, that should be okay. Dun, 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 dun. Let's have another look at this, make sure I haven't done anything silly. Okay, I did actually have an issue once before, which took me a little bit to find, and it was because I wasn't spotting it very well, but I had a semicolon there, not a comma, and that was a bit of a tricky one to find down. Let's just go back and have another look. Site collections, master page display templates, that should be all right. Star rating search. That's weird. I'll do the repeat of a stupidity thing. I'll just try and hit the search again. Hit the asterisk. Something went wrong. Rating HTML is undefined. That should be okay. That's what it should be pulling back in. It looks like that JavaScript. That? Okay, let's not. I'm going to move on. Okay, so what I'm going to do is just go back and hopefully, I mean, that's a bit annoying. Whoops. Okay, so the other thing, let's go back into our result sources, result types. That's a bit frustrating. Okay, so let's just delete that one so we don't get the errors anymore. I'll come back and sort that out later. Back into the search center, make sure we're okay. Okay, so we're back and going. So I'll find out what happened on that later. Now the other thing that I want to be able to do is display the author on that. If we have a look back at our display template, what we've got is that we've got this thing called the contents render body. So what we can do is that if we want to do a change to how we display the body on every search item that we've got, we can go through and modify a different file if we wanted to. So what we could do is we can go back into our master gallery, go back into site settings, master pages, etc., display templates, search, and I really want to open this in Explorer view. Dun, 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 dun. Ah, there it is. Okay. So the other one I want to do is that there is this thing in here called common item body, HTML. If I open that up in Visual Studio, this provides the ability to change how stuff is actually rendered within here for everything that I've got. So in this particular case, I'm going to go down to line 89, grab that thing, and display the author. Under 89, it's about there. So all I'm doing here is just doing straight JavaScript with this little bit of a fancy wire up to get the context, get back to display author. I know that the author's already coming here as a managed property, so I don't have to worry about that. Save it back up, and what I should be able to do now, if I go back and do my search, do the asterisks, back into here, and now we can see that the author's actually been displayed on every item. Half the demo worked. Okay, yay, go me. Okay, I haven't finished yet. Okay, but that'll do for that particular demo anyway. Right, so I ended up doing that, even though what I should have been doing is showing the star ratings under that. So that's really annoying. No, it's not. It's not. Trust me, it's not. You're not getting a prize. Okay, right, so moving along. Okay, so the next thing we're going to look at is this thing called result sources, okay? So under 2010, we had something called scopes. So that provided a logical view of your index. So if you want to kind of partition it or look at it slightly differently, we could create scopes and you could do queries against particular scopes that you've got there. We also had federation, which is the ability to go out and get results back from different search areas as well. What we've got in 2013 is these result sources, which combines both of those concepts together, but it's a hell of a lot more cooler, okay? It does a lot more functionality with it. We can extend it. We can do a lot more additional things with it. So essentially what we do is that we come up and we create a definition that says what's going to be the search provider that we want to use, or what's going to be the URL that we want to use. We can also specify the protocol that we want to use, and we can optionally do a query transformation on that as well. So what that means is that we could say, right, I want to go out and search this other location, but every time I do that, I want to change the type of query that I'm running against that to manipulate the results. So an example where you may want to do that is that you could say, I want to go out to this other search engine, but I also want to add in another word such as the username into it. And so it only comes back and shows you their stuff that they can see, as an example. So out of the box, we get 16 pre-configured result sources. We then go through and create what we call these query rules. Now, these are the coolest thing that we've got in 2013 from a search customization perspective. They enable you to customize the returned results that you get back. So what we do is that we can specify a whole lot of conditions. Once again, this is for your reference. We can do a whole lot of different query actions, once again for your reference. But I will call out a couple of things here. You can add what we call a promoted result. So we can then put it at the top of the search results that we get back. So this kind of goes back to how we used to do the best bets under 2010. Same type of thing. We can add a different result block, which says take this particular results that we've got and then display these slightly differently. We can also change the ranking. This is pretty cool. So we can look for a particular condition in here and then say we want to change what's going to be the ranking score associated with that particular search to change the relevancy of the search results that come back here. Now this is really the prime reason why we're now saying don't go out and create your own custom ranking models. It's a lot easier to do it this way, okay? Kind of think about where we're going with this with regards to doing your customizations from an Office 365 perspective. We've also got this publishing options ability as well, so we can say it's effective between this time and this time. Don't forget, search is a core component of SharePoint 2013. So if you think about it from it's like a product catalog perspective as part of your commerce site that you've got out there, we could have our specials which are running a query between this particular time and day that we've got there. Okay? That's what that's all about. So, once again, back to demo mode. So what I'm going to do is take the out-of-the-box search for the identity, and this time I'm going to go out and I'm going to get results from a different farm and display them at the top, but also add in another word into that particular query. So I'm going to search for the word ADF as well as identity as part of that, bring these two concepts together. So let's jump back. Okay, so once again, I'm just going to do a straight identity, prove that that works. Okay, we've got an identity, we're all sweet and good to go. Now, I go back into my settings over here. I go down to my result sources. And I want to create, these are the out-of-the-box ones that we've got. Now, just one thing to watch out. Sometimes people want to go through and modify these. They make a bit of a change to them. They save it back and it says you're not authorized to do it. And then, as most developers say, but I'm running as administrator, what's going on there? None of you guys do that, do you? Liars. Okay. Now, the reason behind that is that you can't actually modify the out-of-the-box ones. So you have to copy it and do something with it. So I'm just going to create a new result source. I'm going to call it farm1. Farm1. And these are the different types of protocols that I can use on this. So I can say it's a local SharePoint, so go against my local SharePoint. I can say it's a remote SharePoint. I'm going to use the remote SharePoint because I'm going to go across to another farm. Or I could specify OpenSearch or go against Exchange. Exchange 2013, of course, not Exchange any other versions on that. So I'm going to say remote SharePoint index. I then need to say what's going to be my remote service URL. HTTP farm1.ewington.local wag search. Okay, and it's going to be of the search SharePoint results. And this is where I could do my query transformation. So if I wanted to modify the query, for every time I go against this particular result source, I could modify it in here. On this particular case, I'm not going to worry about that. I'm going to do something a little bit different. Save that out. Okay, and that's my remote SharePoint index being created. Is that going to work? Sorry? No? Why? No, I don't need to do a crawl. I know you know. You're not allowed to ask that guy. For a swag bag. Why is this not going to work straight away? I need to do something else. Permissions. Permissions on the other. He got there first. Okay, so there you go. So the issue we've got here is that just because I said I want to go against that particular farm, that other farm's got to say you're actually allowed to go and use me as a search area, right? So I need to configure up some trust on the other side. So I'm going to go across to my other farm, purple background, make it very distinct and different. I'm going to, run this PowerShell script, which is going to get the trust and establish the trust between the two farms. This has to be done on the farm that I want to get the results from. Makes sense, right? Otherwise, what will happen? Anybody could connect through and use your results. You've actually got to say on the farm that's going to give you the results back, I'm going to allow you to come and get to me. Okay? So one thing we can do, we've got these new, basically the PowerShell command set. This is straight on TechEd, nothing really special about it. One thing just to check though is I'm doing something a little bit naughty. I'm doing this over HTTP, not HTTPS. Bad boy, Victor's going to tell me off later on. However, I just want to check to make sure that I have got connectivity between these farms. So as a bit of a trick and a recommendation, I simply grab a copy of that and go over, oops, and I want to make sure that I can actually have connectivity back to that. What it's doing is that it's grabbing this JSON file, which is going to contain all the permissions and help establish the trust between that. I've got connectivity between that, my firewalls are good, so I know that this PowerShell should at least work for me. So pretty straightforward. Just hit F5, make a few sacrifices to the demo gods, and that should go through. What it's done, if I go back to my trust relationships, this is a vanilla farm, fresh out of the box. All I've got is being local. If I hit the refresh, I should now have in my developer farm as a trusted consumer, so it's now got permissions and it's got authorization to use the index on my farm. Okay? Important step. If you don't do this, it ain't going to work. That's it on that side. Now I need to go back to my other farm. I go back into my search settings. Make sure I'm in the right place. I always double check because I've been caught out badly on this before, particularly during stressful situations. Victor knows what I'm talking about. Go back into settings. Okay, and now I want to go into this thing called query rules. So now the first thing I've got to specify is what type of context source do I want to execute my query rule against. I'm just going to say local SharePoint and results. That's going to then show me all the different types of query rules that it's got, that it's using out of the box. Pretty straightforward. I can then go through, change the order, priority, and all those that I've got there. So essentially what it will do is do this in a first come, first served basis. We'll go down the list, hit the first one, and apply that query rule, and away you go from there. So if there's anything below there in that order, it's not going to hit it. It's not actually going to execute that particular query for us, or that thing for us. So I'm going to create a new query rule, call it farm1. I'm going to say under my context here what are going to be my query conditions. Now if I wanted this to fire on every time somebody runs a query, I simply delete it. Okay, it's going to trigger on every time that we go out there. Otherwise, I can add a condition back in, and I can then say what type of condition do I want. Now, this is where you can do some interesting things with this. You have got some different bits and pieces. So you could do regular expressions if you wanted to. So do a pattern match, look at the result types, and all these other things. So you can play around with this quite extensively. I'm just going to do it based on when it matches. And it matches the word identity. And what I want to then do is add a result block as part of what I've got here. And I'm going to call it farm1 results for the subject term. I'm going to configure my query. Now this is quite a good way just to make sure, I want to change the source, right, to my farm1 thing that I created. I can then go in and say, launch my query. Now this is quite a quick and easy way to make sure that you are actually going to get results back from this. So that's going to spin through for a few minutes. Hopefully this will work okay. And while it does that, I'm going to change that to be ADFS. Do the search query. I was probably doing a timeout or something. Come on. Come on. Da, 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 da. No. Oh, sorry, yeah. Okay, so it's a very, very good question. So what we're doing as part of the connectivity, what I was configuring was S2S, server-to-server security. It is using OAuth behind the scenes. The other thing as part of doing this is that you do need to have the user profile service application up and running because you need a user profile on both sides. It needs to be the same UPN. Okay, user principal name. Okay, so that's how it does the matching, is based on the UPN. So, and that typically means the same AD. Okay, that's probably going to be a timeout again. Timed out. We'll just do another test. Yay. Okay, so I'm seeing, probably a little bit hard to see in there. I'm going to zoom in. I'm getting results back for farm 1. So I'm using this remote index going against a different farm. Go OK. I can display. I'm going to go into my settings. And I want to use the display, and I always want to display this above the core results. So I'm kind of treat it like a best bets type situation. Go OK. Hit save. Another gotcha. You kind of think you're done, you've done the configuration, you navigate away, you forget to hit the save button, and you haven't got that change there. Don't forget to hit the save button. Go back into my search center. If I then search for the word identity, go back in here. That's fun. No price. You've already had 2 cars, I know. Okay.
So you can configure all these things on just the search center there. Is there any way, like for instance, when you style up a search result and it's really important that it appears in all.
Okay. So, yeah, that's a very good question. Okay, but still not, because you've already won too many of those. Okay. So I was in the site where my search results are. So really the question is, what happens if I want this to be available across everything? So with regards to the way that we do the search customizations, we've got different levels. We can do it at the service application level, and that applies right down. Site collection level, that applies under. At the site level, there. Okay, so it all inherits down. Sorry? And tenant level as well, because it's, so yeah, search service application, tenant, if you're doing multi-tenancy. Yeah. Yeah, so I've created the enterprise search center in order to do that. Okay, so hence I've got the ability to go through and change, to do a lot more customization. So essentially that should still work if you didn't do the search center as well. If it's in the layouts, no. No. Anything in the layouts you shouldn't be touching unless it's your own page. Okay? Don't do that. I'm watching you. Okay, I'm just conscious of time, so we're going to flick back. But anyway, federated search across that. Good fun and games. Okay, that demo worked. So we're going to change tack a little bit. We're going to look at this thing called custom entity extractions. So where does this fit in? It fits into the content processing side of things. So where this is located means that it's part, essentially, of the crawl process, okay, part of the indexing process. So whenever I do a custom entity extraction, I do need to run a crawl over this. So hopefully, because of timing constraints, we can see the results of this. But I'm going to do some configuration. It's going to change what's in the index, and we can take it forward from there. So what is it? It's basically the ability to infer managed property values. So an example around that could be is that you've got a department which has got a lot of different synonyms. So I like to use HR. So HR can be known as HR, human resources, those fluffy cloud people that do stuff, okay? The tree huggers, okay? So you can then kind of specify up and say the HR equates to human resources equates to human resources, tree huggers equates to human resources. So that kind of defines what the dictionary is. Now the advantage about doing this means that I can then go and do an advanced search to specify that I want to use human resources as a managed property to come back and do that. Now the way that we have that then is that we've got these different types of extraction types. We've got 12 different dictionaries available to us to do these different things with them. Now when you kind of look at that and you kind of go, you've got word part extraction, word exact extraction, word part exact extraction. What the hell's the difference between these? To make it simple, just to remember which one is which, if it's got the word exact in it, it means it's case sensitive. If it doesn't have the word exact, it's case insensitive. If it's part, it means it does a partial match. So as an example of that, if I'm looking for the word micro and I've got part, it will find it in the word Microsoft. Make sense? If I didn't have it as being part and I was looking for micro, it wouldn't find micro in Microsoft. Make sense? Okay, so that's the way to kind of think about it. So we've got these different dictionaries, we've got 12 of them. So the way that we go through and do the configuration of this is that we create a dictionary, we deploy the dictionary, and then we configure our managed properties. Pretty straightforward, pretty simple to do. So back to demo time. What we're going to do is that we're going to do a custom entity extraction, and this time we're going to use it for a custom refiner, which is then going to be this entity extraction, which is going to provide the ability to filter our results back based on what we've got inside our dictionary. So what does that look like? So if I go down to here, go to TechEd, go to search. I've gone through and already created a dictionary. Pretty straightforward. Now the layout of this is actually quite particular. We do need to have the word key followed by a comma and then the display form. So the key is, what are we looking for inside the content that we're looking for? And we're going to map that to effectively this new kind of managed property, which we're going to call Business Connectivity Services. So that's why we've got BCS, Business Connectivity Services, mapping to Business Connectivity Services, WCM going through to Web Content Management, etc. Make sure you get this around the right way, okay? Can catch you out if you do get it wrong. So that's our dictionary. What we then do is that we get our friend PowerShell, and we very simply get the search service application that we're interested in, and then we import it into that particular search service application, specify what the file name is. Now this is a little bit of a gotcha. This needs to be a file share. Okay? For some dumb reason, this PowerShell command will only work if it's a share. Okay? Duh. Then we say what type of dictionary name we're going to use. This becomes a critical bit which defines which one of those 12 dictionaries we want to put it into. It also controls how we're going to do the matching on it. Word part, okay, and exact. Remember what they've got there. So in this case, we're doing word part. The other thing to watch out for too is, particularly when you're doing your IntelliSense, I'll just show you what this looks like. Whoops. You look at those and you're kind of thinking, which one is it? Okay, so one thing to watch out for is make sure you do get the right one. I'll do a Control-Z, make sure we got that, and I'm simply going to run that PowerShell commandlet, and that's going to import that into my search service application. That should take a few seconds. Failed. Access to the path. Oh, don't do that to me. Okay. Down. Okay, hang on. I thought I gave it to everyone. Properties, security, edit, add. Don't do this at home. Woohoo! Go everyone. Okay, go okay, go okay, go sharing, go share, add everyone, add, woohoo, share, done. Take that, PowerShell. Hopefully that's going to work now. Okay. Don't do this at home, okay? Security is important, okay? So I've got that in there. Now, that's all okay, but then I need to match that up against something. So once again, I go back to my settings, I go back into my schema, depending on what level I want to do it at. So this particular case is just on the side. Go into my schema, and then I need to choose which particular managed property I want to play around with this on. So I'm just going to go into body, and what I've got down under here is I can say, what are my custom entity extractions? So what I'm saying is that for this particular managed property, body, it's going to examine it and use this dictionary against it so I can use this coming back. So I've got to make sure that I use word part custom 1, word part exact, word part extraction, make sure I got the right one, word part extraction 1 should be Why are you not doing that? Nah. Okay, we're running out of time, but I should be able to do that. Why are you not doing that? That's annoying. Manage property. Okay, that's stupidity. That's a bit annoying. View property. I'm doing the repeating stupidity here. Okay. Okay, I'm going to fix it. Search schema. Dun, dun, dun. I'll fix you. I'm going to do it up higher. Wet part extraction custom 1. Go OK.
So, because it's only possible at that level, or it should be possible?
I was pretty sure you could do it at that level, but I could be wrong. So I'm going to double check on that one. So now, because I've changed that, I do need to kick off another crawl. Now this will take a few minutes to run through. So what I can do now, while this is running, this will take about 3 minutes to go through to do that. In fact, no, what I'll do is I'm going to go back to my search center, show you how to do the next configuration bit. So make sure I'm in the right place. Dun, dun. Because I'm running a crawl. Should I just shut the lid? Yeah, single server, I know. Should have turned off the analytical processing like Neil told me to do. Okay, so I'm going to edit the page. Edit the page. Yep. My hard drive is going wild. I actually had a really bad week. On Sunday night, I was doing a bit of prep work, and then my laptop blue screened. And I thought, that's okay, I'll fix it up in the morning. Came back in on Monday morning, opened it up again, and went into that horrible perpetual blue screen loop. Okay? How many people have had an SSD drive crash on them? Don't you hate that? So Monday I had to go out and buy a new SSD drive and get everything up and going, so been called out. That's going to take a while. So I'll keep an eye on that. I'll trust it. So while that's going through, what I would have done is gone through, edit the page, gone to the refiners part. What I would have then done is said, right, add another refiner in, which would have been the word part exact, added that in, done a couple of configuration settings on it. When I run a search, then that should have appeared in the refiner parts down the left-hand side. I can show you guys later once this is finished afterwards. So, yep.
That custom dictionary, is
Yep.
there an easier way of managing that apart from just using all time notepad?
No,
No.
that's it.
So I mean, like over the course of time, you can come up.
Yeah. So the question is there an easy way of editing it? Nope.
Simple on the fly, or
No.
just actually ask the notepad.
Yep, that's right. Do it that way. Okay. How do you remove words out of the custom dictionary? You can't, because it infers managed properties. If you want to remove words out of the index, then you can use the content call out. You have to upload it again and rerun your crawl. Yeah. Okay. Yes. Exactly the same. So the question is, do you get the refine accounts coming back? Yes, you do. Okay, so it works exactly the same way associated with it. So it comes down to the configuration property associated with that. Yep. So, okay, so the question is if you have different spellings around it, so you could do exactly the same type of thing, have those different variations, so long as it finds that text in there, okay, and you map it into that, you can do exactly the same thing with that. Sorry? Yeah. It needs to be a straight CSV file, so it depends on the format of that file. So I'm not 100% sure on that. Okay. So what we covered, in fact, that's gone to the edit page, so I can show you guys later if we don't want to overrun too much. Looked at some of the extensibility points. There is a lot more that we covered through. Looked at display templates, result types, result sources, query rules, and kind of query custom entity extractions. And what's up next? Well, that was yesterday. What's coming up next is a nice little deep dive into more about search. Then we're going to talk about going into doing SQL optimizations for SharePoint, so that should be a fun session. And then all your hard questions, come along, stump the panel. We've got a bit of swag to give away for that, so it should be a bit of fun. And I've still got one car left to go, if anybody wants to ask a question.
You choose Exchange as your results.
Yep.
Is that bringing back emails, site mailboxes that the user has access to, or is it their personal?
Okay, so do you want to answer that one now? Exchange, what does it search back? So first of all, it needs to be Exchange 2013. You do need to configure up the secure server-to-server trust with that. And then it comes down to which mailboxes does it come back to, searches against. It's basically, from what I understand, all of the mailboxes.
The challenge with Exchange is, typically as a user, you only have access to one mailbox.
Yep. Yeah. Yeah. Yep. Does that deserve the robot? Sorry, you already got one. You don't want it? Okay. It's no, so it comes down into the control. So what you can only put it in per line item that's in there. So the only thing you could do as part of your display template is you could have it go into part of your JavaScript, but it's still going to be, whatever you got, because it's doing it line item by line item. Okay. Potentially you could. I mean, that could be the other way of doing it. I mean, you could experiment with that. You can have it. Okay. Well, that's me. Okay. Hopefully see you at the next sessions. So, out of here.